Welcome to this talk arranged by Svensk Forum Jämtland. My name is Svante Tirén and I'm going to moderate a conversation on the topic of sustainability and heritage here in Jämtland. And we're sitting here in a space called Scenen, which is a platform in Östersund for sustainable entrepreneurs, artists and designers. And I'm joined here by 3 different people, each representing their own aspect of the whole topic of sustainability and how it is to work and think about sustainability here in Jämtland. Dahlqvist, a material designer, Kevin Denham, an environmental engineer and also the project manager for Jämtland Living University, and also LLobet, who is an artist, and we're sitting actually in your space here at Scenen.
Yeah.
That you share also with Johanna Nestor.
Yes.
And Oliver, you are an artist. What do you work with?
First, we are here in our space with Johanna. We work with. I work with wood and metal, basically, as a materials. Reuse materials from all farm machines, forestry machines, and all tools that I found, all objects that I found in barns or yes.
Right, so you reuse objects and materials and you create lamps, sculptures,
yes.
Furniture, that sort of thing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you're based in?
I'm living with my family in Weekend. We have a little farm there where I have my workshop. And yes, the process a little. It's I take these farm machines, desmount them, storage the materials, or organize them, and after I use that when I have the need or convenience. And normally I start with one object that called me, and I develop the piece thinking with the history of that object using that materials.
And Kevin, you work with Jämtland, which most people know as a museum, but you work with a project called Jämtland Living University. What is that?
Jämtland Living University is a project to design and build a sustainable neighborhood, both for living, for working, for culture, free time, and also an important pedagogical aspect. So it's a project to, by using heritage as a tool, design a modern, sustainable lifestyle.
And you are the project manager, and you also came up with the idea.
That's correct. I initiated this project together with other colleagues, and right now I'm leading it. But now the project has become really big, so it's the people that are behind the project, and I'm just trying to help to get it done.
But the goal is to simply have a residential area close to Jämtland where you use these techniques but also this new kind of thinking.
Exactly. It's combining knowledge from the past and the present to create a modern sustainable lifestyle, to say so. So it's actually designing a new neighborhood. Houses, meeting places, place for work, and different common installations for the general public to get involved and be able to do different initiatives regarding sustainability, both socially, environmentally, and all the other aspects of sustainability.
And Emma, you call yourself a material designer. What is that?
Well, I work with the actual material in the design process, so I focus on rather than focusing on product design, I focus on the actual material. And in my work, I try to combine traditional craft materials and techniques with more digital technologies and experimental methods in order to find sort of what new types of functions and qualities and materials can be found in that way.
So it's really about rediscovering new qualities in old materials and old techniques.
Yes, it is, and I try to look at sort of how a material historically has been used, but also how you could use it today. And birch bark, for example, is a material that right now mainly is a waste material from the wood industry. So most of the birch bark is being burnt right now in pulp production and paper production industry. So I've been trying to focus on how that material could be used in new ways, for example, instead of just being burnt up.
So in your practice, you both work with your hands, the actual craft, but you also have the bigger perspective and the industrial scale even.
Yes, I do. I work mainly with my hands, but also try to sort of interact this very sort of lo-fi kind of work into a more industrial perspective and see how they can connect together. I believe that's a big part of a sort of a sustainable perspective in material design and material.
An example of your work hangs right here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is a piece that I made when I started to work with birch bark. I worked with it from a textile perspective, so I focused on sort of what type of materials could be textile, what other types of materials can be textiles than the ones that we conventionally connect to textiles, and then I started to work with a local material such as birch bark as a textile material. So this is a laser cut piece. I tried to sort of reinvent the material into having more textile notions, such as being tactile or soft and fluid in different ways.
I think one thing that is so interesting with the whole theme of sustainability and heritage is again that it's hard to define yourself because most of us today work quite multidisciplinary. Do you think it's hard to find a way of titling yourself or explaining what your work is? Emma, what do you think with your background?
Yes, I think it is. I work quite wide with different types of. I work with crafts, traditional crafts, and then I work more pedagogically. I've written a book about birch bark craft and sort of teach that tradition. But then I also work more artistically with art projects. And then more industrially, so I have sort of a quite different ways. So sometimes it's quite hard to sort of put everything together in one word.
Yes.
But I think like the main theme overall is quite a red thread. So maybe that's more sort of a theme on working than a title.
Do you think it's important to have a clear title today, or is it okay to be fluid and open? What do you think?
I think it's important to have an interest or a certain idea of the things you think are important, and then through different kinds of educations you can start building
And
up
it's
around.
very individual, like personal, because one is very a specialist in something, maybe can be very precise, be identified in that, but some other not, and because working another way, and I think, yeah, it's all right. So don't need to be, I think.
We're never only one thing, obviously, but sometimes it's difficult, of course, to place yourself.
Yes,
perhaps. I wanted to ask you all also where in Jämtland that you are based and how you ended up here in Jämtland. Oliver, why don't you start? And you're based in Oviken, right?
We're based in Oviken. Well, through my meeting my wife, we decided to move, and because I'm from the Pyrenees, in a small village in the Pyrenees, I needed some close by mountains, and we looked them up and we decided this was a good area for us to have had everything that we look for, like some mountain, good winters for me, and that we could find a place for develop our life, and a good size of city that we also could use it in good infrastructure. This combination of things.
And you're based in Östersund, or?
Yes, I originally come from Argentina. That's where I was born, but I have a Swedish grandmother, so that has affected. Coming to Östersund was coming back to part of my roots. And then decided to come here due to the university, and at that time I also liked climbing a lot, so closeness to the mountains, and that was an aspect.
So the connection to nature was actually, both for both of you, an important factor.
It was back then. Yeah.
Yes.
And Emma, what's your background and where are you based?
Yes, I'm born here in Jämtland. I'm born in Krokom in Jämtland. But then I've been living in Gothenburg for about 10 years. So I took my education there, but decided to move back. So I'm a homecomer. And I'm based in Österåsen, north of Östersund, but I have my studio here in Östersund, so I work in between.
And how should we describe, because Jämtland is known obviously for skiing, for food, for outdoor life and so on, but from a creative point of view, what is Jämtland for you? How would you describe working in Jämtland?
I think I must say Jämtland have a huge story with artists. It have a lot of art background, and I think, if I know well, it was a treat place where from the beginning, and the people and some artists living here, and it was certain kind of moving or buying. People could afford to buy some art and have had start to build that. I think have some kind of relation, and
Yeah, but I think that the connection to the landscape is quite sort of present in the creative life here, both from like craft perspective and also food craft perspective. It's very sort of connected from the landscape and what you can get from here. So I think that is sort of a present theme that that you can see on many creative people.
I mean, it's a geographic also important point with that channel between Trondheim and maybe Sundsvall. Like that axle bring historically a lot of trade, and I think it's a big also make a big role there.
Yeah, and also maybe the quite rural aspects of the whole county of Jämtland is so big, you know? And you only have the city of Östersund, so the one city. So I think that the rural aspects as well is very sort of present in how it is to live on the countryside and on the.
And I guess many of these questions are very important for you, right? Because you work with urban planning.
What I like about this region, what attracts me, is that it's relatively small town compared to other bigger cities. You have a closeness, you have the possibility to interact between different sectors in this area, businesses, the university, culture, and even with the general public. And I think that's a great value. There's more possibilities for interacting and having a dialogue. And I think we can see that today. You know, we are people from different specialities, or if we say that. But at the same time, there's points in common that we can work with. And so this size, it's people in town, you can recognize them. This anonymous aspect is maybe a bit less here than in bigger cities. And at the same time, I think there are possibilities here to show how to build in a more sustainable way.
So what you're saying is that there are many sort of advantages to the small scale, right? The fact that you can connect to each other more easily. Perhaps it's a more easy also overview over what's happening, or
Yes, I think so, and I think that's a possibility, right? That the growth is not, if we say so, out of control. I mean, we have a relatively small But I think at the same time that implies a responsibility. How can we continue developing and sustainably without losing control?
And the possibility.
Yeah.
It's a big possibility here to realize certain things that need to be done. Maybe in other places it's more difficult, but here it's quite a good place for develop.
It's more approachable. But is that possible to translate? Because you work with an urban project, this Jämtland Living. Is it possible to translate those qualities into a living area, a residential area that you are working with?
Yes, that's what we try to do in this project. So it's a short background about the project. It's the design of a new neighborhood for both living, working, culture, free time, and also learning. We try to include this pedagogical aspect in this neighborhood. And there we try to work with different aspects, how to lower the ecological footprint that you can, through your lifestyle, contribute to societal change in a way. We try to increase the degree of self-sufficiency with food production, increase biodiversity with different energy methods. And we try to include different meeting places so that it's through a natural way people can meet, and these things that we were talking about, the dialogue, can happen more easily. While I talk to you, I remember about what an architect, Dahlqvist, says from Sweden, that today we're building storage for people during the nighttime. People go into the house, up through the elevator, through the corridor, in their apartment, and lock their door behind them. And the possibilities for meeting are almost non-existent. So, again, we try to create an urban area that is more an arena for human activities instead of pure design, for example. Now that we're talking about design, or pure specialist
combination of things. But do you think, when you talk to people who are not from Jämtland and don't know the area, do you think that they have very preconceived notions about what it is to be like in Jämtland and so on, or is Jämtland more an open card? What impression do you get? I mean, you studied outside. I mean, you studied in Gothenburg.
That's difficult, but I think that maybe Östersund and Jämtland is quite unknown area to loads of people, I think, at least in the big cities. But or like some people see Östersund as a small town, and then you have a notion of what a small town is. But in some ways, I do think that being close to the mountain areas and maybe Åre, you have sort of some pictures of what Jämtland is. But I'm not sure, sort of, what do you think? Do you have any comments?
Well, my experience is that we, for some reason, we knew about Östersund and that connection with nature and maybe sport, or and it's one of the reasons that make us come and me. And this, I think, happened to a lot of other people. And it's one of the great aspects in Jämtland, what happened here, that it's a lot of, or quite a big spectrum of different kind of people that decide to make a life and decide for Jämtland for certain characteristics that probably are what I said before, good infrastructures, but close to the mountain, not very isolated, but with a university, with facilities for kids, and it's a very like well place for developing your life, and with possibilities still. And I think that is it's something happening.
Do you think that sometimes the skiing and the heritage overshadows a little bit the creativity that also exists here, or yeah? In what way?
I think that also because it's not. I think it's easy to fall into the idea that Jämtland is a nice place to do your outdoor activities. You know, on the weekend, be able to go to the mountains, and but it's much more than that. You can. It's a vital city, and I think there's possibilities for doing constructive work also. And not the least, sustainability aspect.
Yes.
And it's a great platform, I think, for like for develop things. And problem we have in society is this thing with the fast food that you can generalize, like tourism. If you base economy in tourism, it's not a visionary way of thinking, because it's very unstable, and I can compare it like a little with brings richness, but in a very short terms. Instead, when you develop a project like UK or like, I think what brings is that you create a base that people from other areas can get recognized and maybe interested, and maybe can bring people here and create and develop their businesses here. And you are creating another model of society, a lot more strong, fundamental strong, like with a big foundation. And I think this is, it's what it's now in the, how do you call it, in the game, right?
No, that's
Exactly. Maybe it's like seen as an area of sort of consumption, or like the consumption of nature. You come here and you consume nature. But for us who live here, we think it different.
No, I liked what you said about Jämtland not being a place to come and just consuming nature passively, but I think that there's a big opportunity also to do actually productive, active work. Changing that perspective from consuming to producing with nature, being a part.
I think that is something that also unifies all of you, is that in each of your practice you sort of go outside the conventional consumer logic. Would that be a correct way of describing it? Reusing materials and thinking about them in new ways.
I think in all of us it's very present, this aspect, I think.
Of not consuming, you mean?
Of not consuming, and how we do things. Also affects in the consuming, because in my case, for example, with my pieces, I think if people can understand that can reuse materials for develop the objects, functional objects that maybe they need, they can do it, and they can do it. It's a lot of different ways. The reusing materials, it's almost put it in a box, but it's very like no fine craft thing. It's very like fast and but can be so elaborate also and transform it.
And it takes time to change that thinking, right? I mean,
exactly. And I also think, like, connected to that, I feel like there is also sort of a hierarchy, both in craft and design historically, but also right now, I believe there's a hierarchy in materials as well.
Yes.
What types of materials are more valued than others, and I think it's a time for us to sort of reevaluate materials, because we have so many discarded materials that we need to sort of use use in new ways instead of taking out new raw materials.
Yeah.
So that is also something to sort of change.
Yes. It's amazing because also it have an impact on the how people consume, in the way that if you are buying a piece that you fell in love because it's unique, it's special, maybe you're gonna need to pay a lot more, but it's gonna pass through generations, instead to buy something that in maybe 1 year gonna go in the garbage, or you're gonna get tired of it. And I think that it's a key thing in a lot of aspects in society and so on.
I really like just for example to see this lamp that you have made, what it represents. Right, old pieces of tractor, an old wooden part of some.
This is a saw handle. It's like a saw. Also, yeah.
So the ecological footprint of it is very low.
It's the electric components, basically, because they need to be safe. But and I think for me, when I start, it was not something predetermined. When I start to create, it was the materials that I have had close by, and I don't even thought to do another thing. I just used that because it's what I have had, and I know that I wanted to do something like the result was quite, but after working, it became very important for me because I start to go back to my roots through these objects, and I start to make the exercise to understand the past function, the history of all of them, and I start to have a lot of sense everything.
And that's an important point, because I suppose that for a lot of creative people, being sustainable is a process to find out, like, what is sustainable in your practice, and it's not so often a choice that I'm going to be sustainable, it's something that grows more. Has it been like that for you too, that sustainable as a theme was something that came naturally, or how did it work out for you?
Should I start? Yeah, well, maybe, it's a process, and I think that maybe, sort of, from my perspective, when I started to study design, for example, I think I had one perspective of what I thought was sustainable, but then sort of starting to learn more and understanding more the complexness of it, that has changed. And I think one of those things is like this that I talked about earlier, like the hierarchies of materials and hierarchies of processes, sort of how to handle stuff, because I think that the traditional way of designing is like you design from the idea, and you decide the material that you want to design it in, but that needs to be reevaluated. You need to maybe start from the material, or start from that perspective now. Okay, what do we have to work with, instead of the other way around, what do I want to make?
But do you ever feel limited for working with things that are supposed to be sustainable? Does it ever feel like a limitation or something that limits your freedom?
I mean, we are always working in a context, and there's this context imposes certain limitations, concrete limitations on how you can act. Absolutely. So I think a lot of the work that has to do with sustainability is constantly putting into doubt or questioning how can we come up with a healthier way to work, both for nature and for humans. It's
you
a
can
process.
really have the biggest challenge here, like working in that big scale with it's directly involved with the system, that we live, that care, and it's very interesting because I was having a conversation with architects and they say that always, like, because I would like to go all the way around, even with the house making, for example, or rebuilding, making a store, like we should go and have and made it with all recycled materials, you know. But after someone said that the price is going to be a lot higher, and it's like a percentage, like a possible, like a possibility. Inside the possibilities, how the society works, it's very difficult. That, but we also can change that and bring the tools, or to change the system, to bring the tools to make this happen. It's an interesting subject.
I don't know if what I work is a bigger challenge than what you work, because I think we are having to solve different projects in a certain context, but I understand what you say. It's a bigger scale, right, and includes different people, different sectors, and in that way it could be complex. At the same time, it's a big possibility, and I think there's no, and this is like a core value in the way that we work, there's no formula, there's no big decision that one person can take in order to make a shift towards a climate neutral society. Rather, it's important to have a constant dialogue between all these different sectors. Not that, as environmental engineer, I work in my area, as artist, you work in yours, journalist, and not even within construction projects, that electricians, constructors, architects, they work in their own area. We have to have a constant dialogue. Not the least with the people that are going to live there, include them in the design process. University, what is the newest research that we can use? Or what does the research want to research about, so that we can start trying to apply it, and also that the academy can start.
It's all about cross-pollination, I suppose.
I believe that there is a sort of change in that way of looking at sort of connecting in between. Is that something that is happening, or is it still very fixed?
I think it's still a challenge. There's very fragmentized way of working, especially in the construction sector. Urban projects take usually from 5 to 10 years to get done, and the people that are involved in the beginning are completely different from those involved in the middle and in the end, a lot of the times, right? So this continuity makes that the initial idea a lot of the time doesn't get genomförd.
Yeah, let's talk more about that, because we talked before about the many advantages of being based here in Jämtland, and what are the challenges of being here and working here in Jämtland, do you think? Emma, what from your perspective do you think is?
Well, maybe the notion of this place that we talked about earlier is that the landscape, and how you sort of use the landscape. You come here to ski, you come here. I think that is something that is present for all of us who live here as well, and also sort of how the region want to focus on tourism, for example, and maybe that is a challenge in how to sort of use these different perspectives, and how we can work with the landscape in another way, in other ways as well.
I really like this that you're saying, changing the word from using something, right, to working with something, right? It's not that I do something for nature, or it's not that I do something for the people. We do something with the people and with nature. I like that.
For me, like that we create that platform, for example, for show our pieces, no? Because from home by photo you cannot understand. You need to tell the story for understanding that these things. And for us, the meaning to have a place like this here, it was very important, but also challenging, because it's not a place where you have. I mean, I pretend to live from it, and in this size of city or where we live, it's very difficult to found, but it's about, we thought for us was important to base it here because it's where we live. And also that we believe that it's important, the same for us, but also for the place, also that people, it put risk a little and stay and build. This helps to develop a society in some way, great, everything that we do. And the challenge is, of course, it's found the way of selling, found make this networking thing happen.
That's really.
No, please.
No, but that's really interesting what you're saying, like the challenge and also the risk taking on sort of individuals, or to sort of build grassroots places like this, for example, and that can make a city or a place, a village or anything sort of creative and be inspiring. And I think that is something that can be made, of course, by individual initiatives, but also maybe a perspective that needs to be structural sometimes as well, to understand that you need to sort of have this in order to be build
to see value and the effect, to be conscient of the value.
No, see, that's why I think that my job is not more difficult than your job. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but we take risk, but the working with, I mean, the sector is what you convincing politicians to understand the value and the effect that can create your project, because your project is being in that scale, you're creating a neighborhood that it's all the way around sustainable, and it's futuristic, it's visionary, and this can create people that come here because want to live in your neighborhood, and that is a value that need to be seen for. And I think it's a big challenge it's a bigger challenge because you really need to work to convince or make sure that people around you understand the concept, because it's very, very important, and it's I think that is very challenging.
And what would you think, like, what kind of platforms, as you say, is an important ingredient here, but what kind of initiatives, what needs to happen more, do you think, in Jämtland for you to be able to work more and for the message to come through?
I just want to say that this is not my initiative. I mean, I started this initiative with an idea, but it's far from being my project now. This is a project of the people. A lot of people are engaged in this, from the private sector, people that the public sector and the public, the academic. So now it is clear that there is a will from the people, and I just try to generate the conditions, the political conditions, the economic conditions, to be able to implement this project and build it. I think it's necessary for the politicians to listen, and because here if you just read the debate articles that have been written for the last 2 weeks, almost every day, everyone has written about this with a positive attitude. And there is no one here trying to confront trying to create conflict. We're just trying to find a good way to implement this together. So I think if politicians listen to that, I am sure that they're going to understand the importance of taking the advantage of this opportunity. And I think that's very necessary, because a project like this could take all these documents that the municipality and the region write about becoming self-sufficient, about becoming climate neutral, all of these objectives that are written. This is a project that practically can take them to reality through the effort of very different sectors and people.
Yeah.
Do you think the word sustainability still has meaning? Because it's been, as you say, it's been used in so many different ways. It means everything and nothing. What do you think? What should we even call it? Sustainability?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think yes. I think why not? I think the importance is not destroy it or it's important, that word, and it's important to understand the meaning of that word, because it's now we have a tendency, because it's like the society is polarizing, you know, I think, and when you hear sustainability, you hear like and that we need to change. This is, for a lot of people, is very scary. For everyone it's scary, but we should not take it like, I mean, we don't need to go against technology, or it's not about lose anything. It's transformed in a more positive way for our kids and for us also. I mean, normally I think it's also the people take it like it's not going to be. We're going to lose comfort. We're going to lose, and this is wrong. It's not the way of looking at that word.
Sustainability, it's nothing wrong with the word, but I think what is important is to really sort of state out what does it mean, and also implement that in the way the region works, and really to sort of make the word into actual actions. And because I think that this word, you can see that in sort of from a perspective like the textile industry, is a word that is very sort of popular as well.
Yeah.
And you can use it to earn money, or you can really sort of
should
use
be more
it.
responsible.
Yeah.
Should be more responsible.
Yeah, so you should really sort of be aware of what does it mean, and so that it's not just becomes sort of an alibi for being a sustainable place. In some small actions, you really need to sort of.
Because of course today there's a lot of critique, obviously, that sometimes sustainability ends up being just a rhetoric, but we need action, of course. To much I agree. So if we compare, I mean, in the design world, sustainability world has its own meanings, its own traditions, and how it's being defined. How would you say it is from your perspective, and when it comes to urban planning, does sustainability make sense to use as a word?
Well, it's like Emma said, and whatever words in itself, they are not, they are just words, right? I think it's very important to focus on the productivity behind the words to be able to judge if something is sustainable or not. When we talk about this, it just comes to my head, I once read a title of a magazine saying the mother of all sins. And I mean, sustainability, I don't think it's an isolated modern word. I think if we are to act more morally, with a moral conscience, instead of, for example, like we talked before, passively consuming different things or ideas, if we can think more morally, more productive, then and together, then we have a lot of chances of improving the sustainability and the health of our environment as well. as a person working with sustainable urban planning, I feel a responsibility in designing an arena that allows this kind of productive activity or human activity. And that's what I think the building sector today misses. A lot of what we provide as building sector today is storage of people for the nights, going into the house, up through the elevator, through the corridor, and then into your apartment. And again, that's I think that's something we have to change.
So it's really about owning the world and fill it with meaning, right? Sustainability, or?
I believe so. The problems that we have today are human-based, and so the solutions have also to be made by humans. And therefore, as planners, I think we have a responsibility to create conditions so that people can work productively together. And what is important to understand is that the means by which we can produce these better arenas for human activity have also to be better. We have to find better ways in the building brand, in the building sector, to work together.
Complicated word or concept, of course, is heritage and tradition and traditional materials, traditional techniques, and so on. Why would you say are they relevant for the sustainability topic today?
I think it's a pillar. It's one of the pillars of where we go. I believe that we need to. It's knowledge that we cannot lose for face the future. It's knowledge that it's been created. It's based with experience. Like it's something that it has been. Normal heritage comes from like someone that developed something through experience, and this thing has developed, and it has been implemented in society till today. But also, this is like historical heritage, but the role of natural heritage, how we use the resources that we have around, not go far away to take the resources that are in the other side of the world. This is also heritage, the natural heritage, how we use it, how we take care about it. All this, it's already written, or already it's part of this historical heritage.
Right. Because birch bark obviously is also a so-called traditional material, or how do you see it?
Yes, it is. But I also see it. I want to sort of see it as a future material as well. And I agree with you. So the importance of heritage and the importance of taking historical knowledge into the present as well. And for my way of working, I really like to sort of look at the past and the present and the future in sort of a combination all of the time, and look into sort of how we can use historical knowledge today. Maybe we need to change it in some ways in order to adapt it. I think that if birch bark, for example, is a material that has been used historically because of its many sort of positive advantages, and storing food, for example, it has a lot of positive qualities.
It's a multifunctional material.
I think that the reason that why it has been used is because of that, and maybe we can use that today as well, but in new form.
Is that the same for you, or?
Yeah, I agree with what they're saying, because I think sometimes when we talk about we are a museum, right, driving this initiative, people think that it could be misinterpreted that we want to build a neighborhood to replicate the 1800s society or something like that, and it's not about that. Exactly. It's not, the answer is not in the past on how we're going to build the future. It's not in the past, it's not here, and it's not also based on idealistic view that we have to follow. I think that to keep culture alive is to keep a dialogue alive, right? To talk between people and try to integrate these different perspectives to help us shape the future. I think that's the importance of heritage or culture, keeping that culture alive, the culture of dialogue, because in history there's a lot of things that we can learn from that have been done, that have taken us to this climate crisis, and museums have had a lot of responsibility in that, giving a certain narrative of progress based on unlimited economic growth.
And happens something that I think is important to mention, because I come from the countryside and we have the tendency to be ashamed to the way of we did things, like it was not prosper. In some way, like the evolution to make it modern, to make it efficient, and to make it efficient and how you call it, that you can make money from it. This rush, it developed in inefficient. It's inefficient for the future. I mean that when I said to come back in the knowledge to use that knowledge, we don't need to use it in the same way, but to use that knowledge for okay. Now we rush in the modernity. We use materials that maybe we don't know how the house is going to stand in 100 years, because we know that the houses that was made 2 or 3 or more 100 years ago are still standing. Yes. But our houses that we are doing today in a rush to make money, how are going to stand in the future situations and in the future the materials that we use? And I think in the climate, for example, in the climate that we are living, also the architecture have a big role. I mean, if you have something that is being proven that works here for a long time and you put another material that comes from another place, how are we gonna work that material in that kind of circumstances? We forget about all that a little, and it's very important to come back to there, I think.
And I suppose that's one of the sort of characteristics of our time, is that traditional crafts, they have less of a museological, nostalgic feel. It's actually more about the future. Would you say that's what's happening? Or especially for you, I think you're a good example, Emma, with the birch bark, right?
Yeah, I believe so, and I think that, or not that I'm a good example, but that is something that is true, and I think that if you look at design, for example, the sort of the implementation of craft in that has been is very present for the last 10 years, and that's I think that what you're talking about as well, like the traditional craft, traditionally it has been connected to rural areas, and maybe has been valued less than sort of this industrial production. So, and I think that is something that has been changed and also has been sort of or connected together. How to sort of implement craft techniques into more industrial thinking.
Obviously, we live in a time of great worry, great nervosity about what's going to happen. At the same time, you work very hard on exploring new ways of thinking, new ways of doing. Would you say that you are optimistic or hopeful for the future, or how do you think we should approach this?
No, I am, so to speak, deeply concerned about the future of society, we say it that way, the environment, and I believe in the power of dialogue, and I think that if we want some change in the future, we have to have more dialogue. I think we've seen it happen for example, in this project that I'm working with, it started with an idea, and by including and involving different sectors, the businesses, the university, the public in general, and through a dialogue, it has grown to a big engagement. So I believe in the power of dialogue. But of course I'm deeply concerned, and I think that we need support from all the different sectors, not the least from the politicians, so that we have a structural ground to actually do concrete movement forward.
And Emma, for you as well, I mean, obviously we are in the midst of a crisis. How should we look at the future, do you think?
Well, I agree with Kevin that I'm also very concerned about the future, of course, but I believe that it's important to try and stay positive and try to be sort of proactive in your work. But I also believe that even though individuals can make small grassroots examples, I think that is very important. I think it also is very important with the diversity and the dialogue that you mentioned, and also with the structural change, because the questions is so complex and they share a very big aspects of going on individual level up to very big levels. So it's very important to have
both perspectives and positive thinking, at least. I mean, emotionally we don't know, but...
No, but at least trying to make the most of it. Try to be as proactive as one can. I mean, that must be better than doing nothing.
That makes sense. And it's not a choice between optimism or not, perhaps, but it's about the attitude and the fact that we do things, right?
I like to think more what we can do now, and I think in order to shape that future, hopefully we can continue working more between sectors and between different levels to generate the dialogue so that we can shape the future and we can shape it together.
But more platforms and more dialogue across traditional boundaries, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And also looking into sort of reevaluating the way of living, the tempo of living, I think, like slow things down. I think it's something that is very important.
What do you say for the future? Are you an optimist or?
I don't know. I think it's. I'm actually. I don't want to be a pessimist. I don't like. I like to have positive thinking. It's difficult today because I see things that it's about human condition also, and human condition. We look ourselves as too much. Not. We have some kind of lack of perspective, view of society. We close ourselves in looking towards us individually, and this is a big issue in that aspect. And I see in conflicts that we allow that happen, like in the Mediterranean with the refugees, that we are in Europe with certain very important values that are gone, suddenly are gone because we are not interested to, but they are individuals that are dying there a lot every day, and we let it happen that, and also we are so attached to our roles, our ego, and this makes very difficult to see, like, okay, maybe I don't that comfort to go, like the people is afraid to lose the comfort, but instead of focusing lose the comfort, if you have the big picture, how we can make everything, like, don't need to be losing comfort, you can create the comfort, but in a good way. Actually, what we say, what we should go, everything, it's going to be a lot more beneficial for everyone. It's going to be a better life for people. Because if you say that you don't focus so much in productivity, also to create better, a living, that you are more in helping your kids to develop, to all that aspects that are the most important. I think that is, and I would like to be more optimistic, but it's a fight inside me about it. I'm not sure how much we're gonna manage to change or to open that spectrum.
I want to add something about this, Oli, again, that you said the work that I did was difficult. I think I want to thank you and you as an artist, and also you, Svante, for this, because the work that you do has such an important it's such an important symbol, and that's why I think it's so crucial to continue with this, to showing more healthier, more sustainable, more moral art, if you call it so, and that inspires me to continue working with these questions. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. It's a critical moment, but again, a lot of stuff is happening.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you all for joining this talk here at Svensk Form, and we will post links to all of your websites and projects we can see you. But again, thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts. There will definitely be more to talk about.